Today we're painting the greatest Warhammer model that I have ever seen. We've come to a very special workshop to do it. But it ain't no games workshop.
Last month, I spent a week at Wētā Workshop following the entire build journey of a brand new type of Warhammer, an absolutely monstrous 1/6 scale range of collectibles, starting off with Lieutenant Titus from Space Marine 2. Today we're not just going to paint him up using some absolutely insane film industry trade secrets, we're going to see if we can do it better than the best of the best, as I paint up my very own Titus and see if I can get him ready for tabletop faster than the painting wizard of Wētā Workshop, Jules German.
It's a destiny that has been calling for decades.
In case you've never heard of Wētā, this incredible workshop was the creative force behind the weapons, armour, miniatures, creatures and prosthetics from The Lord of the Rings, and has since become one of the leading art departments for hire across the film industry, building an incredible range of amazing pieces in a whole range of wonderful films from Blade Runner to Lord of the Rings. Basically, if something cool for screen was made in the last 20 years, there's a good chance that Wētā were involved. But they also have an entire collectibles division making amazing pieces from all my favourite fantasy and sci-fi worlds, of course led by Middle-earth, and over the past year they've been working on the most unbelievable range of just massive Warhammer models, with Titus kicking off the series and available right now over on their web store, linked down in the description. Now in our last video we left Titus on the workshop down in collectibles, fully sculpted, moulded and cast, and ready for a coat of paint. And while we've been gone, Jules has been a very sneaky hobbit and gone and got a head start on our painting challenge.
Deep inside the Wētā Workshop paint temple, and we have found the man of the hour, Jules. You have been busy, my friends.
Yeah, what have we done? I've been working on the Tyranid for the last 3 days. The skin is almost finished. He's kind of further along. At the moment, I'm focusing on Titus.
Okay, cool. Really in the middle of like the blocking in phase, essentially.
Yeah, totally.
Cool.
And with the paint masters well on the way, it was time for me to meet my very own Titus, a one-of-one limited edition, as I was about to discover.
What is this, dude?
Early on in our process, we do a low-res bamboo print, which we just use to check, composition.
Okay.
Is it working?
Yep.
It's a fast way to get just a 3D object in the real world.
Totally. So this is a prototype, essentially.
Totally.
Yeah.
But I reckon you should have it and go to town on it.
All right. Well, I think it's going to be a bit. I'm just breaking it. Just smash. Love that. Thanks for that,
Yeah,
Jules.
man. You're welcome.
I think this is going to be a bit of a challenge. This is huge. I'm used to painting little Space Marines this big. This guy's absolutely massive. I might have to learn a few tips from the large format master.
Easy, man. Easy.
Let's paint some Space Marines.
Let's do it.
Let's go. Booze.
Before I get stuck into my own Titus, I decided to shadow Jules for a few hours and check out a few of his methods, as well as meeting the rest of the paint department and gleaning as much wisdom as possible. Jules busted out the full assembly of Titus pieces and gave me a rundown of some of his techniques so far, and I'm already getting pretty intimidated by the scale of the project ahead of me. Jules and I have 3 days together in the workshop, and my hope is that I'll get my statue fully painted as Jules and the team finish the Titus Paint Master. Now, while their piece has to be absolutely perfect to get sent off to the factory as the master reference for every Titus being made for customers, my Titus is actually going to become a piece of wargaming scenery. A giant statue at Warhammer scale to get added to either my Imperial Palace or maybe a more 40k era Ultramar board like McCrag. But to keep things simple for the time being, I'm just going to paint it as close to Wētā's as I can and make the scenery-inspired tweaks further down the line.
I've got the base blue down, and then we'll age that down. But before we do that, we'll get all the gold areas done.
Okay, cool.
But we'll spray those, so I need to mask it.
Makes sense. Masking at this scale is like awesome compared to masking the fucking shoulder pad that small. So this is one of the steps that is easier at this scale, not harder.
With the Precious Blues masked, Jules grabbed some rattle cans from the Design Master range, an incredible set of paints I used to use a heap when I worked in the film industry. They are floral spray paints, so they can go on incredibly delicate materials like foam, but they are super carcinogenic, so we'll be using them today with our masks and in one of the 6 massive spray booths in the workshop. All of the gold got smashed with a black primer and then brilliant gold before a nice cure and set under the hairdryer to keep the process moving speedily. But with the morning ticking away and the work piling up, it was all hands on deck as the team began to work together to tackle this massive, massive space marine.
Jules sent up the bat signal, and I was the only one who responded.
That checks out.
Sirasix here.
Yeah, you're not alone.
But he works here. So now I'm gonna mask the red on Titus's helmet.
Oh, he's concentrating hard. That's an Oscar. Oh, wow.
Did it look alright on camera?
That is so good. So while Jules is getting set up to finish his Titus, let's have a look at mine. Now this is probably going to be the biggest painting challenge that I've ever faced. It is a completely different scale, broad, flat textures, two very different styles of models. I'm gonna need to learn some new tips and tricks to get this guy across the line.
I began by working out what parts I could disassemble, removing weapons and hands, taking him off the base, and prying off all of the purity seals and the cloth.
So it makes sense, our first place to start is our blue, but we're gonna need some paint.
Now this whole workshop is just a painter's fantasy land, shelves upon shelves of entire paint ranges.
Now luckily to start with, I don't have to make too many decisions because Jules has set the scheme for me. So we need Design Master Navy for our prime.
I put down a nice even coverage and a couple of thin passes till we had a lovely consistent blue base, and then went to check in on the team while that dried and found Jules working away on the red helmet stripe that he'd been masking up earlier, applying a lot of really thin coats to build up his color through the airbrush.
So I always just go over, make sure it's as perfect as I can get it. I feel compelled to do it in case a mistake shows up, you know? Paint going where you didn't intend it to go.
While Leonard had been retasked with cutting in some of the black undersuit.
Genetically enhanced, don't you know? Just doing a bit of tidy up. It was already blocked out, but it's been a bit of an overspray, so just sorting that out.
But sparkling across the room was a glint of gold that caught my eye, and I managed to trap Sirasek in the spray booth next to mine and force him to spill his gold leaf foil secrets.
The land of gold and glitter. Decorative leaf foil that what you will use, like, you know, when you discover, they use it on postcards, greeting cards, wedding cards, and they do give you this really nice glittering effect.
I can literally see it like reflecting up onto your face, like of the gold.
Wow.
Shiny, shiny. Oh yeah, look at that.
You can see it. Once it's dry properly, just put a bit of aging wash on it.
Do you think that would work on my FDM print as well? Would it go over the kind of bamboo-y thing?
It will be a struggling because of the surface.
Yeah.
The more smooth as the surface it is, the better result you'll get.
Okay.
So, but I mean...
Well, we'll give it a go.
Yeah.
So this guy's massive, Jules. This is a lot of huge armor panels, much larger than I'm normally painting. What do I do here? Lend me your wisdom.
Like I like everything to look like it's been through hell. Like it's really old, and especially a space marine, right?
So
here's a mixture of rock salt, like that you buy from the supermarket.
Okay.
Rock salt and your normal iodized table salt. We're gonna use it as a stencil, like a mask or a stencil.
Right.
And yeah, this isn't my trick. I got it off the internet.
Yeah, that's how.
But I use it all the time.
Yeah,
Man. Just water in a spritzer bottle, and I'll do just a little bit, eh?
Yeah.
And then you can take over.
Yeah, sounds good.
But you just get it wet. You literally just sprinkle salt on,
Far out.
and then the salt sticks
Okay.
while it's wet. And I use a mixture of
Oh, like different grain
Yeah,
sizes?
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So
And
this is going to give us like a really mottled kind of stencil.
Totally.
Oh, look at that.
you just do that. So it's a
Okay.
bit messy,
Yeah.
but like who cares, right? It's painting.
Yeah, it's meant to be messy.
And then once the water's dry, the salt will still be on there. Then airbrush.
So this is going to give us lighter tones going over the top
Yeah, go-
with the dark model underneath.
Yeah. And then once the paint's dry, you just brush the salt off with your hands or with a brush, whatever.
All
And you're
right.
left with this really organic, like chipping pattern. You'll see.
Amazing.
Super simple, very, very cheap.
All right, well, I'm going to assault this space marine.
Lame.
With Titus sufficiently assaulted, that one's for you, Jules, and left to dry overnight, I now turned to the basing elements, beginning with the Tyranid, gathering his spiky mass and giving him a nice bony prime, which we're going to work up from to that classic Leviathan white, but we're going to use some pretty mental film industry techniques for realistic skin. Now, this amazing 1/6 scale Lieutenant Titus is available right now down in the description in a limited edition of just 1,300 pieces. He is a stalwart veteran of the 13th Legion after all. This edition has all the glorious details and quality finishing we're discovering today, including a bunch of extra goodies, gore options, weapon and helmet stands, and on top of his interchangeable heads and amazing chainsword, you get a Thunderhammer.
Titus walking around with his massive Warhammer was just something that really spoke to us. We couldn't choose if we wanted a chainsword or a Thunderhammer. Whatever day of the week it is, you want to be able to change them.
There is also an open edition, so check out the link in the description for the full details on both stunning versions.
So Tyranid time, Jules. This is obviously very different to a Space Marine. What's our kind of process that is so different?
I'll show you kind of how I do my skin, any kind of skin really of this scale.
Yep.
I'm going to use a product called polypropylene primer, which is pretty nasty, but
Okay.
it sticks. It's got all the signs that we like.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, but
All
because
the things that means it works really well, but it's pretty bloody nasty.
it works really well, man. It's just really toxic.
Okay, so this is like a red.
Yep.
That's awesome.
I just do that, knock it back. This stuff dries pretty quick.
Yeah, okay.
As red as you want,
Yeah.
to about that level is what I did.
Okay, cool.
Like that's already dry.
Yeah,
That's
sweet.
kind of why it's so awesome.
Yeah.
This is a speedy process. Dual wielding the spray gun and the dabbing brush, I worked back and forth across the nid, making sure I blended before it dried almost instantly, and then in no time at all, I had some crazy skin tone textures built up.
There's a lot more translucency in this one. So I'd really smash it on, you know? It'll just it'll knock the red back, and then we'll put on this thin, like charcoal afterwards. You don't want too much of this charcoal colour. It breaks up the surface and gives it like sort of freckles or imperfections in this. It makes it look more real.
With the nid ready for some further work tomorrow, we did one last progress check in on Jules's Titus to see that sweet, sweet peel porn of the blue and the gold, and have one final blending pass on some of the last pieces of blue armor on the Paintmaster, and then it was off home for a good night's sleep, which definitely didn't end up happening as we stayed up looking through all of Jules's old Mordheim minis and Nurgle conversions. Day one was absolutely massive, but today is going to be even bigger. But we're here early, it's like 5 a.m, we've just smashed some coffee, and now it is Space Marine time. Our salt, crucially, has dried, so this is basically ready to continue on with the power armor, which I think is really key. We need to knock over this blue, because then there's all the other details to do, and the base and the Tyranid, there is so much to smash through today. I grabbed my Titus and slapped him into the spray booth and fired up the airbrush, thinning down some Macragge blue with Lamian medium and spraying directly over the salt. I applied some even coverage just to his leg, keeping it solid but nice and thin, and then whipped him round to Sirisek's desk to borrow his hairdryer, make sure the layer was fully dry, and then I grabbed a large dry brush and removed all of the salt. When the salt comes off, it reveals the prime underneath and creates some amazing texture. Oh, that's so sick.
So that is absolutely working. Really cool. Let's knock off all the salt and get the whole Marine to this stage, and then we'll see what we need to do to blend it.
It's an ultramarine.
That's nice.
I'm over the moon. I think it looks great.
So I grabbed the airbrush and got our blue coverage over the rest of Titus, and his blue is really starting to get that lovely ultramarine cobalt now. Another zap with the hairdryer, and then a huge process to get all of the salt off, which is actually a little tricky. Not only is some of it really crusted on in different grooves and details, but also if I brush too ferociously, some of my prime starts to come off because of the low adhesion of Design Master to FDM printed plastic. But luckily, the plastic underneath is actually like a grey colour of ceramite anyway, so it kind of just looks like battle damage.
There's always sneaky salt hanging around, isn't there?
Oh, constantly, man. Titus's helmeted head, locking in the colours, and then I'll better put it in age wash, well, all of the armour, once I've cut in all the details. The next few steps, I think, are the most exciting.
Now I'm loving the texture of this speckle blue we've got, but the contrast is definitely too strong. So following Jules's blue method, I grabbed some Aero Color white ink, which is easily the greatest white ink I have ever used. It's super high pigment, so only a drop will tint my nice blue mix to a lovely lighter blue, and then I fired up the spray booth again and applied a really thin pass of this highlight tone over the ceramite to blend the dark primer tone and the salted mid-tone, and the result is just amazing. We've still captured all of that texture, but it's not back enough to kind of read really nicely in the huge context of our marine.
So that is my blue passes done, and I'm pretty happy with how it's turned out. If we compare it to some of the gorgeous resin Wētā Workshop pieces, it's looking really nice. Obviously these have had a few more steps. There's a gloss varnish on this currently drying. Mine probably does have a little bit more texture, but I think that works on my FDM print rather than the absolutely gorgeous resin master that we've got here. So now it's time to start working on all of the black details, and then he's going to come to life.
For my black, we're sticking with the Aero Color range, and their black is just as smooth and incredible as their white. If these weren't like $100 a bottle, I'd buy the whole range immediately. I applied black to all of the undersuit and any of the details that need to be black or silver, and then accidentally yeeted Titus across the workbench, just catching him before he went smash.
That was very, very close.
I'm just applying an age wash, brings out all the detail and sort of knocks it back and makes it look old. It's a matte black acrylic. That'll dry super matte. So it's water, which just helps the paint flow into all the recesses, which is where you want it. It just brings out the sculpt and enhances the forms while also making it look old and weathered, like he's been on a battlefield. It's like a gnarlier version of Nolan oil, really.
So that's the same brilliant gold that you primed with?
Yeah, and now just brush it on.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
So brushing on the Design Master does have some promise, but going directly over the blue, it's kind of messing with the color temperature and it's going a bit weird. So back to the booth to throw down some black, and we're gonna try again.
So I re-primed all of that gold in black, and then everywhere I wanted gold to be, and then switched back to brushing on our Design Master gold, and it absolutely sings over the black. The lovely thin paint is great to work with, but you always have to remember what is underneath.
We've had the Ultramar symbol laser cut out of some masking tape. We're gonna try our best to make this work. See how we go.
Is it tricky to put it down on the curved surface, Jules?
Yes.
Good answer.
It should be alright. We've done worse. I'm gonna spray Ultramar symbol.
It's time for some peel porn!
So we have to be careful about the gold, I suppose, and the blue. There's a lot of layers underneath to protect. Not too much of a bleed. Oh yes, look at that one. Oh, not too bad at all.
Look at that though.
You happy, Jules, or not?
Yeah, medium.
Medium.
Mediums would be easier.
Those will come up nicely.
We'll be alright.
With the gold base layer dry, I followed the next phase of Sirisek's gold advice and grabbed some really strange gold paint that is sort of like a waxy base with real gold foil in an emulsion, which I then smeared on quite thickly. This creates really interesting coverage, which helps counteract a bit of our 3D printed texture and applies quite nicely.
So our gold is looking pretty shiny, but if we leave this overnight to kind of cure, we'll be able to come back and buff it up pretty heavily so that it is even shinier. So for now, we're gonna switch from gold and go to silver.
The silver was just a simple overbrush over all the black on the layers that we need a little silver sparkle, and I'm thinking that I might look at elevating these details with some silver foiling if I can get the gold foil techniques working nicely tomorrow.
So working in the blue, Jules?
Yes.
You do it really thin, hey?
Yeah, the gentler you are, the less, what's it called, bleed?
Yeah, okay.
I'm just paranoid and overly cautious.
Fair. So our final day here in the Wētā Workshop paint department, and there's so much to do. We're here nice and early, and we actually got some good sleep last night, but there's just a lot to achieve. Obviously, the Marine, he needs to be done. We've got all of the details on the base, and of course, there's our Tyranid as well. So let's get this damn gold finished. We've got the buffing, we've got the foiling. That's gonna be complicated. So I think if we have a go at it first thing in the morning, we'll know just how bad that is. And then we can finish off all the other details. But man, there's just so much to do.
All right, good morning. I am painting Titus's pauldrons, just cutting in some base colours. The next step, it'll look like that.
Jules and I began our morning's work, and it was time for me to give all of my gold a huge buff to really bring out the shine in that metallic wax, and it was remarkable just how much of a shine it really took. I would be fascinated to see how this paint would work on some normal scale Warhammer, although the kind of thickness, the viscosity could be a little bit tricky. Then Jules and Leonard had to evaluate a particularly tricky aspect of the Titus Ultima stenciling.
The knee more is shown. I'm going to make these fatter at the top.
Yeah.
That's accurate. The thing is that when they bend their knees, more of the kneecap becomes visible. So that is in the middle. Well, I think we'll be okay, but it does look weird. But it's accurate too.
Cool.
If his leg is straight, that's where the Ultima symbol is.
While the boys nutted out the best way to tackle that knee pad, I jumped back to my gold layer and moved into the final phase, the gold foil, and this time I turned to the master for help.
I think if we lay the paste quite thick.
Okay, so what goes underneath it? Is it like a clear coat varnish?
Yeah,
or?
pretty much. Yeah, it's a clear.
Look at that.
It's expensive, eh?
Oh my god, it is!
It's like over
Out.
$100.
Yeah, cracky.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll slap some of that down and we'll give it a whirl.
Yes. Magic will come alive. Glitter as gold.
I decided the golden aquila across Titus's chest was the perfect spot to start, so I poured out my size, which is a super sticky adhesive that dries to a clear shiny varnish, and put down a solid coat. Sirasek reckons that by having it thick, we might be able to flatten out some of the FDM printing texture. Then once the size had gone tacky but not fully cured, I grabbed a sheet of foil and started pressing and rubbing all over the surface of the print, trying to impart that gold finish to the aquila. This is a really satisfying process, and it's just crazy watching the layers of shimmering foil build up on the model. I moved to the pauldrons and then all the other gold details around the armor, and I just fell in love with how this looks. I'm absolutely desperate to do a little army of Adeptus Custodes for my Siege of Terror campaign and try and use this technique to do their armor. I don't know how it'll translate to the Warhammer scale, but man, my hobby mojo is activated.
Very happy with that. Look at that shimmer in the light. Gold foil. Gold foil. So what's this, Sirasek? This is...
It's just washes on the leather pouch. Jules done the brown, so and then I'll probably just go maybe once it's dry. I might do a bit of dry brushing. Dip to it, slightly dry brush on the high points.
Next, it is leather time, and I need to match the lovely leather tones that the Wētā Paintmaster has, so I grabbed a mix of Vallejo browns and just built up a series of leathery tones until I hit the right kind of areas. So with the belt buckles all touched up, that's all that kind of leather worky done, and our next color to block in is our purity seals. Now Bryn's here throwing down some transfers on what will be those gorgeous Paintmaster seals. They've already got their red and cream on them. We need to get some of that color on ours before we go anywhere near transfers. Now my seals are a little bit different to those kind of gorgeous ones that we've got on the official model. These are a prototype shape, which is a lot simpler, but it also means it's going to be much easier for me to paint and do transfers on. So let's throw down some prime and we'll start getting the color on. I primed my parchment layers with a bone rattle can from Design Master, again having to build up light passes to get good coverage, and then left that to all dry while Joel and Bryn applied some of the custom transfers to their main seals, and that is looking super promising. Can't wait to use those on my own. The final phase of my Titus paint job for now is stenciling. After watching Jules and the team battle with this process yesterday, I was a little nervous, but I'd picked up a few tips and tricks on how to cut out and apply the masks, so hopefully we're gonna go okay. My first job is the white Ultima on his shoulder pad. I nailed the mask after some handy advice from Joel to cut the upper arms of the symbol, which helps it kind of wrap around the curved surface of the pauldron, and then applied a bunch of nice thin passes of white. While I had the white out, I masked up the knee pad and put down the white base tone in preparation for the blue Ultima, and then got distracted by Leonard playing with his fancy LEDs in the helmet visor, which might have contributed to my first pretty big mistake.
So this is why you don't airbrush when you're hungry. That is not the right knee. I was masking this, so blah, blah, blah. I have painted the wrong knee white. Now I could just leave it, I could repaint it blue. I don't really know what I tell you what, you guys comment down below whether you think I should leave it or repaint it. I'll wait. Oh, you want me to leave it? Okay, great, we'll just do the wrong knee white. Love it, good plan, thanks guys.
Some big success from my first round of peel porn, and with the white layers done, it was time to mix in some red. Now this red leather tone goes down on the star detail, on the pauldron, the helmet stripe, and of course the wax seals on all of the purity seals and oaths of moment. Then I threw down some blue on the knee pad, and then some bone on the skull on that pauldron, and then after a bit more peel porn, that symbol is looking amazing. So next up I masked the banner underneath the skull and hit that with the nice bone, and then after a few more peels, Titus is looking just fine.
So that is all of our colors kind of cut in here. We've got base coats on everything. Obviously there's purity seals to go on, bits of weapon details, lots and lots of extra things to do, but we're gonna switch up to the Tyranid now.
If you're enjoying this Wētā Zorpazorp collaboration, make sure you check out the absolute banger we released last week, where I spent a full day in the Wētā Workshop armory forging a real sword from Lord of the Rings with master swordsmith Peter Lyon, who made the original weapons for Peter Jackson's movies. I'm really proud of it, and it'd mean the world to me if you check it out after this one. Link down in the description and the pinned comment. Jumping back to our Termagaunt, I threw down some thin passes of white over the amazing polypropylene speckle we built up on day one, trying to get the opacity perfect to really let that sort of show through. We want the Leviathan white flesh look, but we want the texture of those skin tones that we built up coming through that white. Then for the carapace, we of course need that gorgeous purple, which suddenly makes the whole Nid just pop. Our final base coat for the Nid is the red undertones, which cuts in across a bunch of the muscles and tendons in various joints and organic structures. Then, with the clock ticking down on our third and final day in the painting workshop, it was time to gather our pieces and see all of our progress so far.
Alright, 3 intense days. My guy's looking alright, Jules. He's making progress.
He looks awesome, look.
He's not finished, but progress.
Neither's mine.
Yeah, that's true. Jules has a torso.
Yeah.
No, so yours is very much still in parts.
Yep.
What's left to do on your side?
I've got to paint his unhelmeted face. I've got some weapons to do, some of the base to do. I've got to finish up the Tyranid itself.
Okay, so everything. Quite a bit. Well, I've got, all base coats, I've got weapon details, some sort of aging situation. Obviously this is FDM, not resin, so that's going to be tricky. I can't just use washers. And then heaps on my base to do, but he's there, the essence. It's an ultramarine. Yeah. What's been the trickiest part of the paint job for you so far?
Stencils, obviously.
Yeah. You're telling me. I stenciled the wrong knee.
So it's just the curves. I mean, they're always kind of a pain. These ones just didn't go very well. That's all right. Round 2 next week.
Yeah, nice. Awesome. Well, it's been an awesome challenge, dude.
Oh man, I'm so glad you got to come and visit.
Me too. I'm sure I'll be back, but this was a blast. Look at this guy.